Hey guys, it's Jay here again, and today we have another new Diablo 4 video, and in that I'm going to show you the Paragon system. It can be a bit of a confusing system from the get-go, but I promise you it's not that difficult to understand once you get into it. So here is more or less your starting board. Every character will have their own board and their own attachment boards and paths to go on those boards as well. This will be your starting basic board, at least for the sorcerer class, and every time you gain a Paragon point, you will be able to put 1 point into a tile on this board. So if I gained 1 Paragon point, I'll go from the starting position here of the Paragon starting node and then put it into whatever tile I feel is necessary. Now, the Paragon board is full of primary stats such as strength, intelligence, willpower, and dexterity. You'll have minor boosts along the way, such as 5 intelligence, and going from there on your regular nodes to a lot more interesting nodes when it comes to magic nodes, such as 5% non-physical damage or 2% resistance to all elements. And then ultimately you'll have probably the best nodes out of all of them. You'll have the rare nodes, which can definitely change up your gameplay a lot more. Now, as you can see on these rare nodes as well, you will have a secondary effect if you reach the requirement allowed. So for example here, I can gain an extra 10% non-physical damage, which brought it from 10 to 20% non-physical damage, if I had at least 200 intelligence on my character. Now this takes into account the Paragon gained primary attributes and on your gear as well. So your gear will play a huge role in the Paragon system. But before we go further into this and also talk about legendary boards and expand the board and make it a little bit more complicated with glyphs, I'm going to first start off with how the heck do you get Paragon points? Now you can get 220 Paragon points on this system. After level 50, once you reach level 50, every 25% of the way, like you can see on my experience bar right now, every 25% of the way, it's denoted here, you will get a new Paragon point. That's 4 Paragon points per level. So 50 times 4 equals 200. So once you get to 100 from level 50, you will have combined 200 points, which you can put on your board any way you feel is necessary. Now, where are the last 20 points, you might ask? How are they gathered? Here, the Renown system. Think of the Renown system as your reputation guide to all of the 5 regions within the game. Each region is the exact same with their rewards, but each one will reward you with 4 Paragon points once you get to the end of it. Now, my best advice when it comes to just leveling up in general is you probably will do these first 2 just by pretty much doing some regular gameplay. Will take a little bit more effort to get this one, but these last 2 won't be unlocked until after the main storyline campaign is completed. These are marked behind Nightmare tier content. So although you can earn renown towards these, so you could essentially unlock them the moment you get into Nightmare tier, which you have to complete the World Tier 2 capstone dungeon at level 50, or maybe slightly before it if you're feeling a bit adventurous. You might be able to unlock them once you get there. So the most important part of it are these 4 Paragon points. Now, if you haven't seen or know much about the Renown system, this second line here is for all of your characters on your account. So let's say you got to this final point here, you unlocked it, and this is going to be for every single region, and you got your 4 Paragon points. The next time you make a new character, they will automatically have all of these secondary effects added onto them, including the skills, the potion capacity, the extra obels, and also the Paragon points. So that extra 20 Paragon points will be with them the moment you start the game. However, until they reach level 50, they will not be allowed to be inserted into the Paragon system. So just by doing waypoints, strongholds, side quests, just exploration, your side dungeons and your altars of Lilith, which will ultimately get you some extra primary stats along with other things in the game, you will be able to get to that point. So once again, we're starting off on the Paragon board, and once you get to the end of the first board, you're going to reach what's known as a board attachment gate, which will give you a small little bit of extra primary attributes, and then you can attach a secondary board. Now, I believe there's about 8 or so boards you can choose from each time you get to a gate. You can preview these boards before you get to them, so you know exactly what you're getting, and each board will have a special legendary node, and will also of course have the magic nodes and the rare nodes. In my honest opinion, the most important thing to look for when you're choosing a board for you is to look at what the rare nodes are, because the rare nodes can significantly be better than what the legendary is. Sometimes I won't even go for the legendary, not only because it may be too far out, but it may not be exactly what I want for my particular build. However, the rare nodes might actually be something I'm very interested in. What I try to do once I do pick a board is try and figure out the best way to get to each of the rare nodes that I want on that map, so that way I can use as little Paragon points to beef up my character and get the maximum benefit from my character while I'm doing that. Now, when you are previewing your board as well, you can also rotate the board, effectively turning it in any of the directions as you can see here. So you can change it around so a certain node is closer to you than otherwise. So have a look at that and see whichever rotation of the board you might want to start with and go from there. Now, the great thing is you can always refund the board just by using gold. This is why the gold is up here quite evidently, because it will cost you every time you decide to get rid of a node, it will cost you gold, and the more you do this, the more that gold will jump up and up and up. So if you wanted to, let's say, remove a board because it doesn't gel with your new spec, your new build on your class, what you'll have to do is get rid of all of the currently active nodes on that board, and then you can refund the board. So just a little bit of a gold cost, which will definitely add up. If I zoom out, this system is going to start to look a little bit more scary, but don't worry, when you start the system off one by one, you're just adding one piece at a time. Probably the most hardest thing to decide shortly after getting into the Paragon system is deciding which board you want. Now, although you can refund it, it might take a little bit of preparation to see what's best for you. What I would advise is just check what stats are best for your class, what you feel is more important for you at that moment, and then continuously just build out the boards again and again. So as you can see here, these legendary nodes I don't usually go for. Sometimes valuable for my class or my current build, and sometimes there's not. Outside of the starting board, every other board will have some sort of legendary. But once again, the most important thing that I'm looking for are the rare nodes when I'm browsing for a particular board. And then once again, trying to figure out the easiest path to get to those nodes. Now, to make it a slightly more complicated, you'll see that there's a red outline on these boards, and you might be wondering, what the heck is that? These are the glyph radiuses. Now, glyphs here are what you pick up in nightmare difficulty. Once effectively, when you complete the campaign, you're going to start picking these up. You're going to get these from endgame content, essentially your Tree of Whispers. You can get them dropping randomly from killing monsters. You can get them while completing dungeons, nightmare dungeons, and although it's random which is going to drop, you'll eventually have all of them. So don't worry, after just a few hours, you should have all of them realistically. So you might be looking for a specific one at the start, and that might be annoying, but it will drop after a couple of hours, if not even sooner. So that's the good news. You will start off with a couple of pre-selected glyphs for your particular class, just to give you some sort of, you know, control over the board. But the thing is, you can remove these glyphs at any time for no cost, just like I removed this glyph of control. Now, once the glyph is out of the system, you'll no longer get the benefits associated with that glyph. Now, this particular glyph was glyph of control, which I'm currently using. Once again, you can slot in and out these glyphs anytime you want. Now, glyphs are a gigantic factor to the Paragon system. Probably the most important factor after things like the rare nodes. So what are these red outlines here, this box, which can increase? As you can see, this node over here, this tactician glyph, is quite a high level. It's a level 15 glyph, which you can see over here. Now, firstly, the way to upgrade these glyphs is by doing nightmare dungeons. So every time you finish a nightmare dungeon, you'll get a certain amount of experience. The experience is going to be for these glyphs, not your character as such to help you level, but to level the glyph. So it's a completely separate system, but you must complete a nightmare dungeon for that to be allocated to any glyph of your choice. So let's say, for example, you got 100 experience at the end of a nightmare dungeon. You can allocate that into any of the glyphs you currently have unlocked in the game. I generally try my best to focus on one at a time, but you might want to do it a bit differently. And every time you level up a glyph, it will cost more and more experience to level it up the next time. As far as I know, the maximum level per glyph is level 20. The amount of experience you get from nightmare dungeons directly correlates to the tier level of that dungeon. So a nightmare tier level 1 dungeon gives you about 4 experience or something like that, whereas a nightmare tier 40 dungeon gives you around 100 or so experience. So every single time you level up the tiers, you're going to get more experience. So realistically, try and do as high as you can, or as near as high as you can, just so you can power level those glyphs as fast as possible. So the higher the tier you can do, the less overall grinding it's going to take to level up all these glyphs. And at level 15, it will expand the radius of the glyph, so everything that it will encapture within. So, for example, with this tactician glyph, the most important thing that I wanted is that it grants 95% bonus to all rare nodes within range. Now, you're going to be using this knowledge to help identify where these glyphs are best suited in your particular board. So since I knew I had two nodes very close to each other here, I also have the same situation down here. This would have realistically fit into either of these particular areas, just because it encaptures more rare nodes in that area. But I decided that I wanted it up here because, at least right now in my leveling, is that I really love vulnerable damage. Now, pretty much every class is going to want vulnerable damage. So if I can get an extra 39% vulnerable damage by just having this glyph next to it, that's going to be a nice chunky amount of either the vulnerable damage or else even the resistance. The resistance here isn't anything in particular I wanted, but the extra intelligence was definitely something quite nice to have unlocked as well. And as you can see, as a secondary bonus, I can gain extra cold resistance if I meet the minimum dexterity cap, and also here with the willpower. Now, on top of that, this is where the radiuses get a little bit more confusing. So the radius will start off in a smaller radius, just one tile less on the outside. So you might not be able to just yet meet the under requirements here, that you must purchase in the radius range 25 dexterity to activate its additional bonus. Now, the additional bonus is you deal 10% increased damage for 4 seconds after casting a defensive skill. For me, who casts defensive skills all the time, it's almost as if that's saying you have a permanent 10% increased damage, along with the original bonus of 95%, which increases by 5% per level. So it's currently 95%, but it can go even further than that. So every time you level a glyph, the first effect will get a little bit more chunkier each time, which in effect will also affect its the minimum requirement. So for example, if I go to this flame feeder, which I will change out eventually, I purchased 25 dexterity in this particular bracket. So every and I can see from the top here, for every 5 dexterity purchase within range, you deal 4% increased damage to burning targets. Now that 4% is what's going to keep changing every time I level up this glyph, if I decided to choose so. So that percentage will get bigger and bigger and bigger each time I level up the glyph, as long as I have 25 dexterity, or even more than that within radius. Because if I had like 40 dexterity, that bonus is just going to shoot up more. 25 is the minimum to activate the additional bonus, but any dexterity that you have within the radius will count towards this extra 4% increased damage. Once again, that percentage increases every time I level the glyph. So what I need to do effectively to add on this additional bonus is I have to look around this radius and see, is there any possible way I can purchase 25 dexterity? So there's 5 dexterity, there's another 10, so they're still in the red square. There's another 50, there's 15 now in total. I also got 2 more up here. I had to activate these for now, so that's an extra 14 dexterity, which brings me to 29, which easily gets me across that line. Now, before I got the radius, as you can see, since it expands 1 tile outwards when you radius, that radius was just short, so there would have been no realistic way for me to activate this additional bonus until I got to level 15 to activate that 1 tile improved radius. So it would have stopped at this point. So once I got to level 15, then I could branch it out up to here as it's 1 square further on all sides. So that will allow me to capture more dexterity. Just like if I come over to this flame feeder glyph here, the exact type of case works out. So if I was to look for another 5 dexterity, realistically there's no extra dexterity I can add in here for a quick little damage boost. I'll have to get this to level 15 and then that will expand 1 tile. So let's just see if there's any extra dexterity within that 1 tile if I was to do this with dexterity. We have 1, so we'd get 1 additional, we'd get 2 additional. So we're looking at this square space here. So we'd get 2 additional, oh, even 3 additional actually. We'd get 3 additional, oh wait, this will actually might go down 1 more as well. This will go down 1 more as well. So we'd have 4 additional tiles with various different dexterity. So that would act, so these, if I was to purchase all of these dexterities, that will add to this total, and that, remember, for every 5 dexterity that it says, it gives me that extra 4%. Now realistically, by the time I got to about level 15 on this glyph, that's going to be probably around the lines of 10% increased damage per 5 dexterity. So the overall amount at the top, the 19.8, will increase exponentially. So by doing nightmare dungeons, you'll be able to level up these particular glyphs 1 by 1, and eventually it will capture a larger area once it reaches level 15. Now, depending on the glyph type, it will give you a different requirement as its additional bonus. So it could be intelligence, it could be strength, it could be dexterity, it could be willpower, or even strength. Once again, it's generally primed at your class. I don't think there's any strength ones for sorcerers, at least from my initial observations. Now, only rare glyphs will get this additional requirement. The magic glyphs don't. They don't get this additional requirement. They just get something smaller. To be honest, magic glyphs are a bit of a waste of time in comparison to a rare, so I really don't know what's even the point of them. I guess it's for the early stages of Paragon, but the problem is that since you gain the glyphs randomly, or at least I'm assuming it's randomly because I picked them up. I got some rares at the start, some magic towards the end, and more rares. Essentially, if you got all the rares in the beginning, anything additional, the magic is just going to be nullified. They're not really great. So just focus on the rares and just pretty much choose whichever seems to fit in that particular area. So for example, if I chose a glyph that required, let's say, this 40 intelligence, I'd have to check first and foremost, is there even a possibility of me getting 40 intelligence within this square? Or even when it expands outwards by one tile each. So let me just have a quick look just to see would there be any possibility. I'll actually use up here as an example since the squares already increased. So can I get, if this was this 40 intelligence one on the adept, would that even be possible? So far I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 45 it looks like. So I would have just got to the minimum bonus of this intelligence if I got all of those intelligences in this. So you can use that also as a defining factor of, oh, does the glyph fit best here? So if you find it's going to be too difficult to reach whatever this additional bonus is, even if you have to expand it, it's more of a long-term goal, then it might not fit there for your particular needs. You might put a glyph there just temporarily so you get some sort of benefit, even if you're not going to get the additional bonus, but you might just be like, okay, look, for just a few hours, I'm just going to keep that here. Once I get this particular glyph leveled up, etc., etc., now I'm going to change the glyph. Because remember, you can change this glyph at any point. It's completely up to you. You can slot in any glyph that you want. Oh wait, I can't put in that one because I already have it. So it won't allow you to put in a glyph you've already used. So if I put adept in here, ta-da! As you can see, the radius is already smaller, because it's not level 15 yet. But once I put back into Tactician, boom, now it has expanded one square outwards. So there we go. That's pretty much Paragon in a nutshell. I hope you found this very informative. So once again, every Paragon point that you gain, there's 220 in total. Every 1 point of Paragon will get you 1 extra tile. You can refund these tiles as often as you want, but it will incur a gold cost that rises each time. The most important thing that I'd go for is whatever you think the most important rare nodes are on that board. I wouldn't necessarily go just because of the legendary, unless that legendary was god tier legendary. But at least with this particular build, I generally tend to avoid the legendaries. Now, every time you reach the end of a board, now as you can see, after the starting board, you have 4 different areas you can go for to attach a different board. So I could have expanded out this way, but since I knew I wasn't coming up to use this burning instinct on this particular build, there was no point in me coming up here. So I knew that the best nodes for me were all contained in this region, so I knew to flip the board in this direction. So I knew that I would attach the new board here, and then that can help determine the rotation of the next board and the next board. Completely up to you. So you can, even although this one can attach here, it's not going to really do anything. It's more of a it's already attached. So there we go. So as you can see, this board, this entire system can be expanded upon. There's you know, all around as much as you want. But at the end of the day, you have 220 Paragon points right now to be able to use. And you have to get to level 100 to actually be able to have all the maximum. So you can chop and change as much as you want just for a gold cost. And once again, you can preview each board that you want to use. I'd show you right now, but then that means I'd have to take out all these and then put them all back in at the end, which would be just a bit of a pain to do it. But you'll have a preview of each board, and you just go from there. Check whatever rare nodes are on it. If you think the legendary sounds godlike, awesome. But that's where I think the most confusion of this system is how do you choose the next board? So you're thinking ahead into the future. Okay, this board sounds good now, then I'll do this one and this one. You're trying to map ahead as far as you can. But once again, if you make a mistake, or change your mind, or even change your build, and that board is no longer required, or it makes sense to do it later on as you level up more and have more points to spend, then you can just refund it, put another one back, rotate the board as you feel necessary, and just go all over again. And lastly, the glyphs. These are going to be increased by doing nightmare dungeons. Once again, at level 15, it expands the range of this glyph, so it encaptures more tiles, which can definitely feed onto that glyph's bonus, and even its secondary additional bonus as well, which can definitely really transcend the power of your build. And you can chop and change these glyphs as often as you want with different ones over here, and just have fun with it, guys. So, and lastly, you can get 200 points in total, 4 Paragon points per level every 25% of the level, and that's for 200 points, 50 to 100, and the last 20 points you'll be given from doing your reputation or your renown per region. So all of these regions, each of the 5 regions, will grant you 4 Paragon points. So just by playing the game, you'll unlock everything you need. But realistically, you're not going to be able to unlock these last 2 tiers until you have completed World Tier 2 Capstone Dungeon to unlock the nightmare content. So there we go, guys. I hope you found this this video informative. Until I see you again. So this is the Paragon point with the Renown system explained. If you have any thoughts or questions, or just leave me know in the comments below. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you feel this could help any of your friends a little bit more as well. Until next time, I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Goodbye.